Before dawn on June 6, 1944, the English Channel was covered with more ships than the world had ever seen gathered in one place. Battleships, destroyers, troop transports, landing craft, and supply vessels stretched across the horizon, carrying nearly 160,000 Allied soldiers toward Nazi-occupied France. Somewhere beyond the darkness lay the beaches of Normandy, protected by thousands of German defenders who had spent years transforming the coastline into one giant fortress. Massive concrete bunkers overlooked the sea, artillery batteries waited behind thick walls, and machine gun nests were carefully positioned to sweep every inch of open sand. Yet hidden among those defenses was another threat that many young American soldiers feared even more than artillery: German snipers. Unlike machine gunners, whose positions often revealed themselves after opening fire, snipers could remain invisible for hours or even days. One carefully aimed bullet could kill an officer, a radio operator, or a medic without warning. There would be no dramatic exchange of gunfire, no obvious target to attack in return. A soldier would simply collapse, and everyone nearby would suddenly realize someone was watching them through a rifle scope. Throughout the Second World War, German snipers developed a terrifying reputation. Many had trained for years before the war even began. They learned camouflage with almost obsessive attention to detail, constructing hides so convincing that Allied patrols sometimes walked within a few feet without noticing them. They memorized how sunlight reflected off rifle scopes. They understood how shadows moved throughout the day. Some even attached small pieces of local vegetation to their uniforms, changing them whenever seasons changed to remain perfectly blended with the surrounding landscape. Patience became their greatest weapon. Some remained motionless for more than 12 hours waiting for a single opportunity. One bullet, one target, then silence. For ordinary infantrymen, encountering a German sniper could become psychologically exhausting. Every church tower looked suspicious. Every shattered farmhouse window might conceal a rifle barrel. Every ruined tree could hide an enemy wearing camouflage. Fear spread quickly. Once soldiers believed a sniper occupied an area, movement slowed almost to a halt. That hesitation often accomplished exactly what the sniper intended. Among the American forces preparing for D-Day, however, there existed a different kind of soldier. The Rangers. Unlike conventional infantry, the U.S. Army Rangers had been created for missions considered too dangerous for regular units. Inspired partly by British commandos, they underwent some of the most demanding training in the American military. Endless obstacle courses tested their endurance. Forced marches pushed exhausted recruits to their limits. Live-fire exercises taught them to remain calm while bullets passed overhead. Hand-to-hand combat, demolitions, amphibious assaults, night navigation, and small unit tactics became second nature. Only the toughest completed the course. Many quit. Others failed. Those who graduated earned more than a new uniform patch. They developed a mindset. Move faster. Think faster. Strike first. The Rangers understood something many other soldiers gradually learned through experience. The best way to survive a sniper wasn't simply finding cover. It was hunting him. That philosophy would soon be tested under some of the worst battlefield conditions imaginable. As dawn finally broke over Normandy, the first waves of American troops raced toward beaches that quickly became scenes of unimaginable violence. German artillery shattered landing craft before they reached shore. Machine guns fired relentlessly into tightly packed groups of advancing soldiers. The sea itself turned red as wounded men struggled through chest-deep water carrying equipment that often weighed more than 70 pounds. Among the chaos, Rangers landed with one objective that sounded almost impossible: capture Pointe du Hoc. Rising more than 100 feet above the sea, the cliffs overlooked both Omaha Beach and Utah Beach. Intelligence reports indicated that 6 massive German 155mm artillery guns hidden there could devastate the invasion if left operational. The mission demanded something few armies would even attempt: scale vertical cliffs while under enemy fire. Using ropes, ladders, and rocket-fired grappling hooks, Rangers began climbing. German defenders immediately realized what was happening. Machine guns opened fire downward. Rocks were pushed over the cliff edges. Grenades exploded among the climbing Americans. Several ropes snapped. Men fell back toward the rocks below. Others continued climbing despite watching friends disappear into the surf beneath them. When the Rangers finally reached the top, they expected to encounter enormous artillery pieces. Instead, the guns were gone. German forces had secretly moved them farther inland shortly before the invasion. Rather than celebrating the successful climb, the Rangers immediately spread across the surrounding countryside searching for the missing weapons. It was during those first hours inland that they encountered one of Germany's most dangerous advantages: hidden snipers. Normandy's countryside looked deceptively peaceful from a distance. Rolling fields stretched between small villages connected by narrow dirt roads. Thick hedgerows divided farmland into hundreds of enclosed compartments bordered by centuries-old earth embankments covered with dense vegetation. Those hedgerows became perfect sniper positions. A rifleman could fire through tiny openings, almost impossible to notice from the outside, before disappearing deeper into the vegetation. Advancing Americans suddenly found themselves fighting an enemy they often couldn't see. A lieutenant walking beside his platoon would suddenly collapse. A machine gunner adjusting his weapon would fall backward without warning. Medics running toward casualties occasionally became targets themselves. Each shot slowed the Allied advance. Each hidden rifle created uncertainty. But the Rangers responded differently. Instead of remaining pinned behind cover for extended periods, Ranger patrol leaders immediately organized small hunting teams. Usually consisting of 4 to 6 men, these patrols moved independently through fields and hedgerows searching specifically for sniper positions. Their methods differed sharply from ordinary infantry tactics. Rather than advancing directly toward suspected firing points, Rangers often circled wide through neighboring fields before approaching from unexpected directions. Sometimes they crawled for hundreds of yards without speaking. Sometimes they waited silently for hours. The hunters had become prey. One veteran later recalled that experienced Rangers rarely looked where everyone else was looking. If a sniper expected attention from the front, they approached from the side. If he watched the road, they crossed fields. If he overlooked open ground, they moved through drainage ditches. It became an endless chess match played with rifles instead of pieces. German snipers quickly realized something unusual. These Americans weren't behaving like frightened infantry. They were actively searching for them. Several captured German soldiers later admitted that Ranger patrols became especially dangerous because they refused to remain predictable. Traditional sniper doctrine relied heavily upon forcing enemy troops into hesitation. The Rangers often removed that advantage completely. One incident near Vierville-sur-Mer illustrated the difference perfectly. An advancing Ranger platoon suddenly lost its lead scout to a single rifle shot fired from somewhere inside a nearby hedgerow. Most infantry units would have immediately taken cover, while officers attempted locating the hidden shooter. The Rangers did take cover, but only briefly. Within minutes, 2 small teams quietly disappeared into neighboring fields. The remaining soldiers intentionally maintained activity near the original position, drawing the snipers' attention. Several minutes later, gunfire erupted. Not from the front. From behind the German sniper, the Rangers had quietly circled through nearly 200 yards of dense countryside before approaching from his blind side. The sniper never saw them coming. Stories like that gradually spread among both American and German units throughout Normandy. The Rangers seemed unusually difficult to trap. They anticipated ambushes. They rarely advanced carelessly. Most importantly, they hunted back. As fighting continued deeper into France, German snipers discovered that engaging Ranger formations often carried greater personal risk than targeting ordinary infantry. Because every shot they fired started a hunt, and the Rangers almost never gave up once that hunt began. The deadly game between Germany's finest marksmen and America's elite Rangers had only just begun. Far worse battles still waited beyond the hedgerows of Normandy. The battle for Normandy did not end on the beaches. If anything, it became even more dangerous once Allied forces pushed inland. Beyond the narrow strips of sand lay a landscape unlike anything most American soldiers had ever encountered. The French countryside, particularly in the region known as the Bocage, seemed peaceful from the air. Small farms, narrow dirt roads, apple orchards, grazing cattle, and endless green fields painted a picture of rural Europe untouched by war. That illusion disappeared the moment soldiers stepped inside it. The Bocage was one of the most effective natural defensive systems in Western Europe. Each field was surrounded by centuries-old hedgerows growing atop thick earthen embankments, some rising nearly 10 feet high. Dense roots held the walls together while tangled bushes, vines, and trees formed nearly impenetrable barriers above them. Tanks struggled to cross them. Vehicles became trapped between them. Infantry could rarely see farther than 50 yards before another wall of vegetation blocked their view. For German snipers, it was paradise. Every hedgerow offered another concealed firing position. Every orchard contained dozens of trees suitable for observation. Every ruined farmhouse overlooked roads that American patrols eventually had to use. Visibility became so limited that soldiers often walked directly into ambushes before realizing enemy troops were nearby. Unlike the open deserts of North Africa or the vast plains of Eastern Europe, Normandy forced men to fight at unbelievably close range. Sometimes the enemy stood only 30 yards away. Neither side knew it. For German snipers, this environment transformed every patrol into an opportunity. They no longer needed church steeples or factory rooftops to dominate the battlefield. Instead, they blended into nature itself. Carefully woven camouflage suits covered with leaves, grass, and branches made experienced marksmen nearly impossible to detect. Some remained hidden inside hollow trees. Others dug tiny firing positions beneath thick bushes, leaving only enough space for the barrel of a rifle. Then they waited, sometimes for hours, sometimes all day, occasionally for nothing. That patience frustrated many inexperienced American units. A single sniper could delay an entire company. Officers became reluctant to expose themselves. Radio operators hesitated before crossing open ground. Engineers stopped clearing roads until hidden threats had been eliminated. Every pause bought precious time for the German defenders. The Rangers, however, adapted remarkably quickly. Many of their officers recognized that traditional infantry formations simply moved too slowly inside the Bocage. Long columns presented easy targets. Large groups made too much noise. Every snapped branch, careless conversation, or careless movement increased the likelihood that hidden German observers would detect them. So Ranger tactics evolved almost daily. Patrols became smaller, quieter, more aggressive. Instead of advancing in long files, Rangers frequently moved in dispersed teams, each responsible for watching a different sector. Scouts advanced well ahead of the main body while experienced observers continuously searched not for enemy soldiers, but for signs, fresh footprints in soft soil, broken vegetation, recently disturbed earth, an unnaturally straight branch where nature rarely produced straight lines, the faint reflection of sunlight against polished steel. Even the sudden silence of birds sometimes revealed that someone else occupied the woods. These tiny details often meant the difference between life and death. One Ranger veteran later described sniper hunting as less like combat and more like detective work. "You weren't looking for the man," he explained. "You were looking for the mistake." Every sniper eventually made one. Perhaps he shifted his position too quickly. Perhaps smoke from a recently fired rifle drifted through the trees. Perhaps a frightened bird unexpectedly flew from a nearby bush. Experienced Rangers noticed everything. As the weeks passed, German snipers discovered that eliminating Rangers proved considerably more difficult than eliminating conventional infantry. The Americans refused predictable behavior. If one route appeared dangerous, they simply found another. If an area seemed too quiet, they assumed someone wanted it to remain that way. If the first shot came from one direction, they immediately began searching for a second shooter somewhere else. That cautious aggression frustrated many German marksmen who depended upon surprise. The deadliest encounters often became battles of patience. One such confrontation unfolded near the outskirts of St. Lo, one of Normandy's most fiercely contested objectives. American forces had been advancing steadily toward the town when progress suddenly stopped. No artillery barrage, no machine gun nest, no visible defensive line, just one sniper. Every attempt to move along a narrow country road ended the same way. One shot, one casualty, silence. The hidden marksman displayed extraordinary discipline. He never fired twice from exactly the same opening. After every shot, he shifted position slightly, forcing Americans to guess whether they still searched the correct location. Several infantry assaults failed. Mortars accomplished little. Artillery risked hitting friendly troops advancing nearby. Eventually, the Rangers received the assignment. Rather than launching another direct attack, the Ranger lieutenant ordered something unusual. Nobody would fire. Nobody would move unnecessarily. For nearly 2 hours, the entire patrol remained almost completely motionless. The countryside became eerily quiet. No shouting. No rifle fire. Nothing. The German sniper waited. Patiently. Eventually, believing the Americans had withdrawn, he slowly adjusted his position to improve his field of view. It lasted only seconds. One Ranger observer noticed movement inside a distant hedgerow. Not much. Just enough. The lieutenant quietly pointed. 2 Rangers disappeared without another word. Instead of approaching directly, they crawled through irrigation ditches running parallel to nearby fields. Progress measured only a few feet every minute. Mud covered their uniforms completely. Thorn bushes tore at their sleeves. Insects crawled across their faces. They ignored everything. After nearly 90 minutes, they reached the opposite side of the sniper's position. The German marksman never expected danger from behind. His attention remained fixed toward the road where American infantry had previously appeared. The Rangers closed the final distance silently. When the confrontation finally ended, they recovered one of Germany's finest sniper rifles alongside detailed observation notes, describing American troop movements gathered over several days. The road reopened. The advance continued. Incidents like this gradually shaped German opinions about Ranger units. Interrogations conducted later in the war revealed that experienced German soldiers often recognized Ranger tactics quickly. Unlike ordinary infantry, Rangers rarely accepted becoming pinned down. Instead, they immediately became hunters themselves. This forced German snipers into a difficult dilemma: continue firing, or relocate before the Rangers located them. Both choices carried enormous risk. As Allied forces pushed across France during the summer of 1944, Rangers continued participating in some of the most dangerous operations of the campaign. Town after town required clearing. Bridges had to be captured intact. Forests concealed retreating German forces determined to slow the Allied advance at every opportunity. Each new battlefield introduced fresh sniper threats. Ruined churches, factory chimneys, collapsed apartment buildings, dense forests, railway embankments. The terrain changed. The deadly game remained the same. Then autumn arrived. With it came colder weather, shorter days, and one of the most unforgiving battlefields of the entire European campaign: the Hurtgen Forest. Stretching along Germany's western border, the forest seemed almost designed for snipers. Towering pine trees blocked sunlight even during midday. Thick undergrowth restricted visibility to only a few yards. Constant rain turned trails into rivers of mud, while artillery explosions shattered enormous trees into deadly wooden fragments capable of killing soldiers hundreds of feet away. Veterans later described the forest as one of the darkest places they had ever fought. German defenders knew every trail, every ridge, every concealed firing position. Again, snipers became one of their greatest advantages. The Rangers entered knowing exactly what awaited them. They also knew something else. Every sniper, regardless of skill, relied upon remaining unseen, and every hidden man could eventually be found. The forests of Germany would soon witness the most dangerous sniper hunts of the entire war. By the autumn of 1944, the war in Western Europe had changed dramatically. Just months earlier, the German army had defended the beaches of Normandy with confidence, believing the Atlantic Wall would slow the Allied invasion long enough for reinforcements to arrive. Instead, American, British, and Canadian forces had broken out of Normandy, liberated Paris, and pushed steadily toward Germany itself. The retreat had become relentless. Entire divisions were exhausted. Fuel was scarce. Experienced officers had been killed or captured. Yet despite these setbacks, one advantage remained firmly in German hands. They still knew how to make every forest, every ruined village, and every mountain pass deadly. And nowhere was that more apparent than the Hurtgen Forest. Stretching for nearly 50 square miles along the German-Belgian border, the Hurtgen Forest looked almost untouched by civilization. Massive pine trees blocked much of the sunlight even during midday. Thick fog drifted between the trunks every morning, while narrow trails disappeared beneath carpets of wet leaves and broken branches. During rainstorms, visibility dropped so low that soldiers often struggled to recognize men standing only 20 yards away. For experienced German snipers, it was nearly perfect terrain. Every tree became a possible observation post. Every fallen log concealed another firing position. Every rocky hillside overlooked trails the Americans eventually had to use. The Rangers entered the forest fully aware that they were walking into one of the most dangerous sniper environments of the entire war. Unlike Normandy's open farmland, the Hurtgen Forest offered almost no opportunity to call in accurate artillery or air support. Aircraft rarely saw through the thick canopy. Tanks struggled to maneuver between closely packed trees. Even radios often failed because the rugged terrain interfered with communication. Here, small patrols determined success. And nobody excelled at small unit operations better than the Rangers. Within days of entering the forest, Ranger patrols began encountering the same terrifying pattern repeated over and over again. Silence. Movement. One rifle shot. Then complete silence once more. No machine guns. No mortar fire. No visible enemy. Only another wounded soldier lying on the forest floor while everyone else desperately searched for an invisible marksman. For inexperienced troops, these attacks created frustration. For Rangers, they became puzzles. Every sniper left clues. Not obvious ones. Tiny ones, a broken fern bent in the wrong direction. Fresh mud on a tree root. Recently disturbed pine needles. The faint smell of cigarette smoke drifting between the trees. A shell casing hidden beneath leaves. The Rangers learned to slow down. Instead of focusing entirely on what stood ahead, they constantly studied the ground, the branches above, and even the behavior of wildlife. Birds often revealed movement long before soldiers noticed it. Squirrels unexpectedly fleeing one area sometimes suggested someone had recently disturbed them. Even the complete absence of forest sounds could indicate that another human being waited nearby. These observations gradually transformed Ranger patrols into something much more dangerous than ordinary infantry. They became counter-sniper teams. One veteran later described their mentality perfectly. A sniper hunted men. We hunted the sniper. That difference changed everything. One afternoon, a Ranger reconnaissance patrol received orders to investigate a crossroads where several American messengers had disappeared during the previous 48 hours. No large enemy force had been reported. No artillery positions had been identified. Only isolated rifle fire. The Rangers suspected exactly what they were facing. Instead of marching directly down the road, the patrol split into 3 separate elements. One remained visible. 2 vanished into the forest. The visible group intentionally moved with enough noise to attract attention. Boots snapped small branches. Equipment occasionally rattled against web gear. From a distance, they appeared almost careless. It was exactly the impression they wanted to create. Nearly 30 minutes passed. Nothing happened. Then, a single rifle shot echoed through the forest. The lead ranger instantly dropped. He wasn't dead. He had deliberately fallen the moment the shot rang out. At almost the exact same moment, the two concealed ranger teams reacted. Rather than searching toward the road, they looked for where the sound had traveled through the trees. Experienced soldiers knew echoes often deceived inexperienced listeners. Instead of trusting their ears alone, they searched for movement. One ranger spotted it. Barely. The brief flash of a rifle barrel withdrawing behind thick brush. Without speaking, the hidden teams began closing in. The German sniper realized the trap only when he heard movement behind him. He attempted to relocate. Too late, the Rangers had already cut off every likely escape route. Later examination of his hide amazed even experienced officers. The position had been prepared for days. Camouflage blended perfectly with surrounding vegetation. Small observation holes overlooked the crossroads from multiple angles. Food, water, extra ammunition, and detailed maps filled carefully hidden compartments beneath the firing position. Had the sniper remained patient another few minutes, he might never have been discovered. Instead, one shot had revealed him. It reinforced a lesson Rangers repeated constantly throughout the war. Every sniper became vulnerable the instant he decided to fire. As winter approached, another enormous challenge confronted Allied forces. In December 1944, Germany launched its final major offensive in the West, the Battle of the Bulge. Hundreds of thousands of German soldiers surged through the snow-covered Ardennes forest in a desperate attempt to split Allied armies and force a negotiated peace. The offensive achieved complete surprise. American units found themselves overwhelmed, roads clogged with retreating vehicles. Entire regiments became isolated. Confusion spread rapidly across the freezing forests of Belgium and Luxembourg. For German snipers, the snowy landscape created entirely new opportunities. White camouflage suits allowed them to disappear against frozen hillsides. Leafless trees provided excellent observation. Fresh snow preserved every footprint. Again, Rangers found themselves confronting one of the enemy's most dangerous weapons. But by now, months of experience had transformed them. They no longer reacted emotionally after the first sniper shot. Instead, they immediately began asking questions. Where would they hide if they were the sniper? Where was the escape route? What terrain offered both concealment and observation? Thinking like the enemy often proved more valuable than simply searching for him. One particularly brutal engagement occurred near a forest road leading toward Bastogne. Several American supply convoys had come under repeated sniper attack during the previous week. Drivers refused traveling the route without heavy escorts. Progress slowed to a crawl, while desperately needed ammunition and medical supplies piled up behind the front. The Rangers received another assignment. Find the sniper. End the threat. The patrol departed before sunrise. Snow muffled every footstep. Breath formed clouds in the freezing air. Hours passed without contact. Then one ranger quietly pointed toward a distant ridgeline. Fresh footprints. Only one man. The tracks disappeared behind thick rocks overlooking the supply road. Rather than following directly, the patrol divided once again. Half climbed the ridge from the east. The remainder circled almost a mile through dense woodland before approaching from the west. The German sniper never realized he had become the hunted. By midday, the road reopened. American convoys resumed moving toward Bastogne. One more invisible threat had disappeared. Stories like these accumulated throughout the European campaign. Captured German officers occasionally remarked that Rangers proved unusually difficult to delay using isolated sniper teams. They moved unpredictably. They adapted rapidly. Most importantly, they possessed extraordinary patience. A sniper expected frightened infantry. Instead, he often found another hunter. Of course, not every encounter ended in the Rangers' favor. Many paid the ultimate price. Some patrols disappeared entirely. Others lost experienced leaders whose absence was felt for the remainder of the war. Counter-sniper work remained among the most dangerous assignments any soldier could receive. The Rangers understood that reality better than anyone. Yet they continued volunteering, again and again. Because every sniper eliminated meant dozens of ordinary infantrymen could continue advancing with far greater safety. When Germany finally surrendered in May 1945, millions celebrated the end of nearly 6 years of devastating war. For surviving Rangers, however, certain memories never faded. Not massive tank battles, not strategic maps, not speeches from famous generals. They remembered forests where silence itself became frightening, long hours lying motionless in mud or snow, watching through binoculars while searching for movement almost too small for the human eye to detect. They remembered playing a deadly game against opponents every bit as patient and determined as themselves. History often remembers the Rangers for spectacular assaults, scaling the cliffs at Pointe du Hoc, leading daring raids, capturing fortified positions. Those achievements deserve every bit of recognition they receive. But hidden behind those famous victories was another mission that rarely receives the same attention: protecting their fellow soldiers from enemies almost nobody else could see. German snipers earned their reputation through discipline, patience, and extraordinary skill. The Rangers earned theirs by proving that no matter how carefully a sniper concealed himself, someone could always be patient enough to find him. Perhaps that is why experienced German marksmen gradually came to respect and often dread encounters with Ranger patrols. Because once a Ranger unit realized a sniper was nearby, the battle changed. The sniper was no longer the hunter. He had become the hunted. And in the forests of Western Europe, few things were more dangerous than a determined group of US Rangers who had decided they weren't leaving until the hunt was over.